Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Yes. Welcome to another episode of Hot Mess Moments, the extra special, extra large, extra episode of Hot Mess Moments.
They get it. You can calm that right down. I was going to be like, yes, with extra content. And that was going to be it. But Dylan in his extra ways.
I just want to take it there. For those that don't know, this is our extra special episode because we are covering 2 episodes of The Nanny and an episode of Lost. So it's going to be juicier and bigger and better than any other episode. Yeah, it's going to be great. So we've got a lot to talk about today.
Yeah. So I say we dive right in. We have 2 episodes of The Nanny that we'll talk about. And we probably won't go as in depth with at least the Christmas episode. I feel like there's a little bit more in terms of plot and character development to talk about with the personal business episode. And I know that you're bursting at the seams because when you were watching this within 36 seconds, you wanted so badly to talk. To the point where you paused it, unmuted, and I said, save it for the podcast. So we haven't even discussed it yet.
I'm literally bursting at the seams. Y'all, I think I'm psychic. That's all I'm going to say. We'll get to why I think I'm psychic, but let's start off with the first episode in the series. I'm not going to lie. My notes are a little scattered because
mine are too.
But that's a good thing. But that's a good thing because I was so engrossed in both episodes that I felt like I didn't need to take notes because there was something that was different about these 2 episodes that we watched that I felt like flowed really well compared to the other ones. And I think this goes back to what you were saying earlier, where they start to hit their stride. They've definitely started to hit their stride because the Christmas episode, it was weird. It felt longer than it actually was in a good way. There were so many story beats within the episode that by the end of it, I was like, this feels like it was like a 30, 40-minute episode, and it was only like 20 minutes. And I was floored at how much they were able to stuff into
the Christmas episode was the gift that kept on giving.
It really was.
Now I feel bad because I debated so much. I felt like covering a Christmas episode in May, we could do it as a standalone episode, but I was trying to figure out if we should have combined it with Imaginary Friend or with Personal Business. And now watching both of these, I'm like, I'm kind of wish we'd have done it with Imaginary Friend because I think we really picked apart the episode, but I don't think it was as necessary. I think it would have been nicer just to jump right in and just be like, but then the Christmas episode happens and it's funny and blah, 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 blah. But here we are. I chose, and we're going to live with those consequences.
Yeah. As we learned in Lost, choices matter. Everyone has a choice.
Matter.
So episode titled The Christmas Show. So Fran I'll break down just the overall, then we can talk about our favorite moment. So basically what happens is Fran is starting to learn the Christmas traditions of the Sheffield household. And we learn that Maxwell is a big traditionalist. He likes to do things his way. But because he likes to do things his way, this also means that he tends to put work over Christmas. And because of this, he celebrates Christmas a day early to the disappointment of his children, specifically Gracie. Gracie really wants her father to be there on Christmas. And so Fran is trying to kind of make this Christmas, which is hilarious. The hilarious part of this episode is that she's a Jewish woman
who's never celebrated Christmas.
Yeah, she's never celebrated Christmas, but she thinks that she can celebrate Christmas better than Maxwell can because Maxwell's kind of lost the point of Christmas, basically. And I really liked how in this episode, they give good time to not only Christmas, but to Hanukkah. Because, they realize that one of the main characters in this show is Jewish. And so they do talk about Hanukkah a little bit. There's a lot of jokes surrounded around Christmas and around Hanukkah. I really liked how they handled this material. And basically, Fran catches wind that they might be getting Christmas bonuses for their hard work. And so Fran, being the amazing nanny that she is, decides to spend this money she hasn't gotten yet in order to buy gifts for the kids.
Because have you seen the cost of Fabulous these days?
I can barely afford wonderful.
I was hoping you'd do it. Yay! This is all I want is somebody to riff lines with me. Oh, yes.
And so she's like, she's very selfless. And so she buys gifts for the kids. And she also convinces Maxwell, you should also buy gifts for the kids because it comes from the heart. And that's what's important about Christmas. So he takes her advice a little too seriously, and he buys her a gift instead of giving her a check for her hard work. So a bunch of hilarity ensues where she is like, oh crap, I need to like figure out what I'm going to do now that I can't pay for this. And so Maxwell gets her a vase. She goes to pawn the vase off. She has this very intimate talk with Maxwell, learns that the vase has value, tries to get the vase back, gives up her grandmother's watch in order to get the vase. And they all end up going to the church for the holidays. And Maxwell is about to fly off for this trip that they have to go on with Cece. He ends up the flight ends up getting delayed, and he takes that time to right the wrongs after Niles calls Maxwell and was like, hey, Fran has done a lot for the family.
You done fucked up here.
Yeah,
let me tell you a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. So he tries to do his best, and he goes to buy the watch back, ends up buying the wrong watch, but it's the thought that counts. And he ends up accidentally sitting on the vase, breaking it, thus breaking his ass. And we have this hilarious moment where they are all inside of the hospital room and they're all having this conversation. And this like Santa guy is in the bed next to them. And Gracie has this moment with her father where she's kind of like, oh, I believe in Santa now because my Christmas wish came true, which was to have my father here for Christmas. And on that cue, the Santa that was next door somehow disappears and is outside.
Dun, dun, dun.
And I'm like, is this Lost?
And then I was just gonna say, and then it turns into previously on Lost.
Yeah.
And Locke is fucking Santa, and he's just like,
it just goes to the black screen with the like that jump that like your thumb sound.
You did that very, very succinctly. I'm a big fan of it. Good job.
Yeah. Didn't even have to look at my notes.
I'm like really proud. Honestly, I think that's the way to go. Because I think that like sometimes I think Lost is a little different from The Nanny, but I think that with The Nanny, I think we can kind of talk about it like wide scope and then zoom in on our favorite moments and stuff. Yeah. Sometimes it's not like that, but like this particular episode makes sense. With this episode, I caught something for the first time watching it.
What?
This time. All right. Are we ready?
I'm ready.
This is going to be the dumbest thing you've ever heard in your life.
Oh,
and it comes from me, so you know it's real. Okay. In the very beginning. In the very beginning.
I hate this.
There's a moment where Brighton says, Maxwell's really anal about Christmas. And then he has a broken ass at the end of the episode. It was foreshadowing.
So I caught that on my first viewing.
Listen, my first viewing, I was a wee child.
Okay.
I don't watch this episode that much because I'm not a big person to watch like Christmas specials unless it's actually Christmas. So, yeah. But regardless, I mean, I knew a lot of this episode by heart still.
No, I think this was a great episode. Some things that I wanted to point out that I felt were really funny were I love the twinkle lights joke that Niles does, where he's like, Maxwell's looking at the tree and he's like, oh, I really wanted the twinkle lights. And so Niles just unplugs the lights, replugs the lights, unplugs the lights. Like, there you go.
But he kind of goes, fine, first, as if he was like resigned to just do that.
Yeah.
This is actually, I think that's actually really an important note. Ever since the butler, the husband, the wife, and her mother episode, we're starting to see a lot more of Niles kind of like take ownership over his like relationship with Maxwell. Like we see him speaking out a little bit more, making a little bit more of these jokes. And I'm starting to see the kind of character that I know and love Niles to be, which is yes, he has a lot of those one-liners and zingers and all that kind of stuff, but he's a little bit more involved in the conversations now than he had been, and is like more in on the gags. And that's what I like about this episode in particular.
Oh my God. I completely agree with you though. I actually, another thing like with this episode that really stood out to me was how very direct Maxwell is in not wanting Cece. So before it was like kind of this like running joke. And the funny part where Cece is like, I'm standing under mistletoe, Maxwell. Ooh, you know what this means, Maxwell? She's like very heavily hinting, and then Fran comes in and kisses her. But I was very shocked at the development of his character, because before it had been this thing where he was kind of like oblivious to what Cece was doing. Like he was like stubborn. Now he's like plainly knows what Cece's trying to do and is just rejecting all notions of it. And I think we know why, because we learn next episode why he's not interested in Cece anymore.
I don't know if that's a theory, I guess, on your behalf. I know what you're going to say, but I don't know if it's true. So we'll
get out of here.
No, I totally agree. I think one of the things that I think people find, there's some people who find it as an inconsistency in his character. I think it's absolutely a consistency. This notion that in so many aspects of his life, he's completely clueless, especially when it comes to like what's happening in his household. And that he seems very aloof and just kind of like gets by because he knows that like he's a privileged, good-looking British rich dude. Like, of course, like he's going to be able to just get by on things. Yeah. But he also knows more than a lot of people give him credit for. And so like people try to like take advantage of that. And I think that he gets his rocks off by like having these moments of being like, oh, I think that's holly, not mistletoe, and just kind of slyly playing back, because my theory is that he very much is the kind of character that's like, I know what they're trying to do, but I'm going to pretend like I don't know because I like the attention, but I also but I think that he is a very empathetic character though too. Like I think that he really cares about people's feelings. I think he's the only one that cares about Cece's feelings. Not a lot, but enough that he wouldn't want to be the reason why she's hurt.
Absolutely.
So that's my theories.
Yeah, I think that's actually accurate. I also want to point out with the development of Maxwell's character, obviously he's becoming a much better father throughout these episodes. He's becoming much more connected to the family. He has this like better relationship with Niles than I think they've ever had. I am curious where they're going to take Cece's character, because we haven't seen that development yet from Cece. Because I thought in the episode where they had the Here Comes the Brood, I thought in that episode is when we were going to start seeing Cece's character develop away from like wanting to thirst after Maxwell. But we've learned that that's not the case. She's still on this like train. So I'm curious when eventually we're going to get off that train. And I have a theory about that. I'm going to say it now, even though we're not in the next episode.
Go for it.
I think Cece is going to be on this Maxwell train until she sees Fran and Maxwell have an intimate moment, and it's going to destroy Cece. And she is going to be like emotionally really hurt, and it's going to be Fran's job to make Cece feel better and like have that woman to woman talk, being like, hey girl, I get it. I've been in the same situation you've been in, but also like we feel something, like there's something there. And so that's my theory. Do I think it's going to happen in season 1? Maybe, because I thought we weren't going to hit this like this. We have to talk about it just a little bit. So next, when we talk about the next episode more in depth, there were so many developments in personal business that I thought we weren't going to get into like season 2.
Okay.
I was shocked.
We might as well, like, is there much more about what we could do is actually go into the next episode's plot, and then we could just generally talk about like what we liked about the 2 episodes. Like, I don't think we need to sit like only Christmas, only personal business.
Okay.
So let's move to the second episode.
Well, before we do that though, I do want to talk about the outfit of the episode, my rating of the episode, and my MVP and LVP.
Okay, perfect.
my outfit of the episode, there were so many great outfits this episode, but that Christmas outfit of Fran was so hot and so cute. That little red, she was like kind of a deep V, like lacy.
I thought of it as Mrs. Claus's negligee, like bathrobe from the 90s. Like,
absolutely. Yep.
Mrs. Claus came down and said, I hope you have a good flight, Mr. Claus.
She's like, oh, I'm a gift that needs unwrapping.
When you get back, I'm going to give you such a sleigh ride.
I hate it. I'm suddenly Jewish.
Hey.
No,
your candles.
No, I hate.
What if Santa and Mrs. Claus were Jewish? And they're like Fran, and they like better understand the Christmas spirit than people who practice it.
That would be actually a fun Hallmark movie. So Hallmark, get on it, where Santa's Jewish and he only celebrates Christmas because he knows that people have a thing for Christmas and it means a lot to them. But he's actually Jewish.
But the actual Hallmark movie has to be how Santa and Mrs. Claus like met in a small town after like Mrs. Claus left the city, and like they get bonded over the fact they're the only Jewish two people like in a small town. Because I grew up in an area that had like very few Jewish people, and I just feel like that is what Hallmark will do.
Yeah, and Santa has to be like hot, and Mrs. Claus is fucking drop dead gorgeous. It makes no sense.
Nasty. Like, she's nasty, but like
I was gonna go there.
Oh no, I'm getting there. Oh yeah.
Oh my God.
Nasty.
Yeah, she's just a gross, dirty, nasty Mrs. Claus. I don't know where we're going with that. Why does it always go to BDSM?
I don't know. I think you and I have issues. Not issues. Not that that's an issue thing, but it's something that we need to like look into ourselves. Well, not together. It
always goes to BDSM. With my outfit of the episode being the Christmas outfit, my rating for this episode, for the Christmas episode, would probably be and like an 8. I really, really liked it. The only reason I'm not giving it a 9 or a 10 is due to the fact that it did feel long. I enjoyed how long it felt, but I could see someone else sitting here being like, this is the plot. Like this is going on a lot, even though it did feel long. I will
also say what I kind of like about the Christmas episode, and the reason why you should watch this episode again at Christmas is that there are little homages to Christmas stories throughout the episode. And one of them that I think is the most obvious is like the gift of the Magi, the idea that it's kind of one-sided in this scenario where, Maxwell is like, here's a vase. And she's like, I needed something in order to get this. And like, it's kind of like the lock of hair being sold to get the watch, and selling the chain for the watch, and selling the watch to get something for the hair, like the couple does in the gift of the Magi. Like there's aspects about it that I think are really cute, but I agree. I think for me, the reason I also agree, not that I'm rating these episodes, but I agree with an 8 because not necessarily about how long it feels, but like how sometimes it's just like a little over the top kitschy for like, it's a holiday thing. Like, oh, how did you, being with you for Christmas was also my wish. Like, oh, come on, Maxwell, we get it.
Yeah. Oh, the spirit of Christmas is within all of us. I'm like, Gracie, you're a mess. Shut up. Like, and then my MVP for this episode, I would probably have to give to Fran, just because I really liked her acting in this episode. I thought she was really silly, and like you said, she was giving me Lucy Liu of the 90s this episode. And
not Lucy Liu.
What did I say? Okay, I have a story. Why? Why? I have a story of why I said Lucy Liu instead of Lucille Ball.
I'm gonna cry. You know who was the Lucy Liu in the 90s? Lucy Liu.
That was so stupid.
That was my favorite thing. I'm hot now. Oh, jeez. Tell us the stories so that
It's not even that great of a story. I was like, something came up about Charlie's Angels, and I started thinking about Charlie's Angels again, like in the last like 2 days, and so it made me think of Lucy Liu
just instead of Lucille Ball. What you meant was, of course, Lucille Ball.
Yeah, Lucille Ball. So
great.
He was like that. Oh my god, that was funny. My LVP for this episode would go to Brighton.
Okay.
Because I have noticed lately that Brighton's humor is always in references, and it is getting old. I'm hoping that we see a different kind of comedy come out of Brighton, but they always default to, look how funny it is, a young kid that gets it, that gets references that only adults should know. And I'm like, yeah, that's funny here and there, but like for me in this episode, Brighton was like very forgettable.
Yeah, I feel like what Brighton talks a lot in references. That's a lot of his jokes.
Yeah.
Or it's at the expense of Gracie's mental health.
Makes sense.
Or it's talking about Maggie. Like his character is always poking fun at something else.
Yeah.
Using references, using impressions, and that kind of thing. But I honestly think if there weren't characters like Niles or even Fran, Cece, who have a sharper tongue, who are better at this kind of thing, his character would be stronger. But because they have so many stronger, sharper tongue characters, like it kind of falls a little flat. It's like he's trying to keep up with them and trying to be like, oh, I'm also like smart and funny and witty and all that kind of stuff. And it just falls flat. Also, he's like fully 11 in this, like something 10.
Like that, yeah.
So,
yeah, so he can choke.
And that's it.
And that's it. So with the 9th episode of The Nanny, which is personal business, girl, Beth saw this within the first 30 seconds of this episode, freaked out because not only was my theory right about this clear sexual chemistry between Maxwell and Fran, with the fact that Fran openly flirts with Maxwell and he is like completely on board with it when she's talking about her Victoria's Secret and how she got things that are meant to be secret. And Maxwell's like, hubba hubba. He's like kind of like, he's like, awooga, awooga. And Fran's just kind of like, I don't know what straight people do.
No, what I was going to say is it's so funny that you said that. Honestly, if you want to know what it's like being a woman dating a straight guy, look no further than Fran's date with Brock.
With Brock, yeah. Oh God, we're gonna talk a lot. We're gonna
unpack this, but yes. So you have that theory that.
So that's basically confirmed. Yeah, that's basically confirmed in my brain, in my head canon. It's confirmed. Yeah. But there's another thing that I was so shocked we're getting in season 1 is my theory was completely correct from episode 1 that Fran and Maggie there was gonna be this issue where Fran was rubbing off on Maggie so much that Maggie now wants to be Fran and is like doing what Fran does. And I still think it's going to come to a head at some point where Maggie's going to take it too far. And then Fran needs to teach her the lesson of like, you need to be your own independent woman. Like you just can't be me. That's not how this works. But snaps for me. I will snap for myself. Snap for me.
Explain why though.
Oh yeah.
For those that may not have watched or if they're just having a trouble remembering.
So Fran buys this like beautiful, like kind of like bathrobe of sorts that was from Victoria's Secret. Then Maggie comes in and is wearing the same exact bathrobe. And
does the exact same "good morning, everyone" pose that Fran does every morning, which we've never seen Maggie be that animated, except for when she was playing the piano at like the end of Imaginary Friend, which that was a whole thing.
We try to forget that. And Throughout this episode, there are multiple moments where Maggie is trying to replicate what Fran does, such as putting on makeup. She's like putting on blush. She even directly references at the end of the episode how, look, we're so similar. Isn't it crazy we have the same life? Like, you're going to date Brock and I'm dating Eddie.
You're dating this internationally acclaimed, famous soap opera star, and I'm dating Eddie, which I think is funny. We haven't gotten any references to Eddie in the past few episodes. And this is, again, like we talked a little bit about it in the last show, but I really do think that this is kind of an anachronism here, right? So how was this supposed to happen after the Nook Schlep? Has Maggie been dating this entire time and just she hasn't had really any lines or of substance to get to know her. So are we just assuming with this line that that's kind of a coverall of being like, maybe. Besides the little B plot, D plot lines that she's getting, she's also been dating Eddie ever since. So those are still things that could be discovered later on. But
I'm just gonna like TLDR this episode's plot.
Yeah.
Basically, Maxwell needs to find a leading man for his play. Cece finds out that Brock Storm, who is this very famous soap opera actor,
from the show, which kills me every time I hear it. One day after another. Yeah. And can I make actually? I'm sorry to interrupt.
I have a story after this about soap opera, so you go right ahead.
Okay, so One Day After Another, obviously supposed to be similar to Days of Our Lives.
Yeah,
which is the show that Mr. Sheffield's actor Charles Shaughnessy was on, and he was a doctor, I believe, and that his character's name was Shane. So it's just it was a little nod to Charles Shaughnessy that Brock Storm's character's name is something Dr. Shane. So they put Shane in there as kind of like a little nod of the head to Shane Donovan, which is what Maxwell or Charles played.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
In the 80s. Yeah, in the late 80s.
So my story about specifically Days of Our Lives is my grandmother is like a huge fan. She's been watching it for years. And it always comes back to my grandma. God, this is like the fifth reference to my grandmother.
This is what the show does. Like when I watch this show, I see my Aunt Alice, I see my grandmother, I see my mom, I see my like cousins. Like there's parts about this that are just, especially if you grew up either with family members or if you yourself are middle class, poorer, and you have some of these things that just kind of gel in and like, it's like perfectly, this is what it was like to grow up in the 90s. Like it's easy to see like your reflections and bring it back to your family. So I totally get it.
Yeah. So I specifically remember coming home from school, or no, sometimes when I can't remember when. It was usually like around noon or so. It was like around lunchtime where Days of Our Lives would air back in Nebraska. And I think it was whenever I was like home from school, I would have to sit through and watch Days of Our Lives with my grandmother because she would use the only TV that we had in the house. And so I wasn't allowed to play video games at that specific time because that was Grandma Soap's time. So I would like play on the computer or something and catch wind. But I remember specifically, and I don't know why, there was one plot in Days of Our Lives that was so over the top and obnoxious that it is burned into my brain. So there was this thing that happened in like the early 2000s, this plot line with like, they had to go to this like island. And this is, I think it's because of Lost, which ties us all back into Lost. I'd been watching Lost at the time. And so.
Oh, so this is like mid 2000s then.
Yeah. So yeah.
Wow.
So my grandma's been watching for years, since like the early 2000s to like, I think she still watches it today. So in this episode or in this plot, they go to this island that's like ran by this like giant like secret spy facility. And I'm like, what is this? This is supposed to be a show about like drama and like who's dating who. There's like magical force fields with spells and stuff. And I'm like, Grandma, what does this have anything to do with like the show? And she's like, oh yeah, because this girl dated this guy. And she was like trying to explain to me. And I'm like, Grandma, have they ever had like magic in the show? And she's like, well, no, but like it's part of the plot. And I was like, Grandma, why do you watch this?
It's a lot.
And then I want to say like every 3 years bring it back up. I'll be like, Grandma, do you remember that one time in Days of Our Lives?
They were on an island.
Yeah. And she's like, oh, that was like years ago, Dylan. Like we're
way past that.
Yeah.
Here's the best part though. Okay. So like after school, when my family had moved to this house that was a couple blocks away from the high school, all of the buses would pick up the kids at all the elementary schools and then go to the high school. And that's where any transfers had to happen. My brother and I would get off the bus and then we actually would just walk the couple blocks home. We didn't have cable at the time. We only had like the basic like 4 or 5 channels from an antenna. And we would come home and there would be nothing on except for Guiding Light. So we used to have to watch Guiding Light or play Super Nintendo. So I have like weird images of like sitting on the ground because there wasn't a TV stand or anything. We're still moving into this home and like paying attention to Guiding Light and then like switching to play Donkey Kong Country 2. Like it's just like a really weird combination. So I can't play Donkey Kong Country 2 without thinking of Guiding Light. But I do think it was funny because I remember there was like somebody between like 4 episodes over the course of a week that they were still waiting for this coffee to finish. And like,
oh my God.
Like, so they like finally poured the cup of coffee 4 days later after like starting it, like, cause they were trying to give you that realism that it's all happening like in a moment, like right now kind of thing. I was like,
that's so ridiculous.
Yeah. Good times. But I think tying this back to the nanny though, what we learned in this episode is that Fran is obsessed with soaps, especially One Day After Another, and especially the soap star Brock Storm.
Yeah.
I was going to say Summers, but his last name is Storm.
So yeah, exactly. So she's obsessed with this Brock guy. And so Brock comes over and they're like trying to convince him to be in the show. And Fran shows up in this like very skimpy, like showing skin outfit on purpose because she's a huge fan of Brock. And she's kind of like luring him in a little bit with like her like personality and stuff. And Brock is hook, line, and sinker. He is on board. So Fran ends up taking everyone upstairs, and there is a big part of this episode that is mixing business with pleasure. And they are talking about how you cannot mix business with pleasure because
this hand motion for those that are watching, you can't have any of this. It's one hand over another, you know.
Yeah, so you can't mix business with pleasure at all, because if you end up mixing the two of them, it's like bad news for Maxwell. So eventually we get to the part where Brock is agreeing to want to be in this production, but his one stipulation is to get paid more than everyone, to have top billing, and Fran to have the nanny. And this causes we're supposed to think moral dilemma. It's not a moral dilemma. It's that Maxwell has feelings for Fran and he doesn't want to showcase it just yet. And so Maxwell, do you think
it's that he doesn't want to showcase it or that he doesn't really recognize what the feeling is?
Oh, I think he fully recognizes that he has feelings for Fran. And I think it's because he doesn't want to acknowledge it because, again, he doesn't want to mix business with pleasure. That's a thing. So he has clearly shown throughout the episode so far that he has taken a liking to Fran. He really appreciates her. His body language showcases that he really likes her. And Fran clearly has shown that she likes Maxwell, like in her body language and like the way she interacts with him. I do think she still sees him as a boss. And I think that's something that she would be open to. Like, I think if Maxwell was,
do you think that was ever an issue when she worked at the bridal shop and she was dating the owner of the bridal shop?
That's true. I never thought of that. Oh my God, you're right.
There's your.
Well, there it is. There it is. But this is where we're supposed to believe that Maxwell has a moral dilemma about like, is he pimping out Fran in order to get Brock? And Niles,
all the chefs.
This is the best Niles has ever been in this episode. I'm sorry. I'm going to say it now. MVP, hands down, Niles this episode. Oh my God. His one-liners this episode, top notch. He is on fire. He's in this episode a shit ton. Honestly,
my favorite is when he says that he fell.
it's so good. It made no sense. He's like, why are you so late? And it's like he could have just said like, oh, sorry, I was busy. But no,
I was
he
upstairs. I'm in a huge freaking mansion. So.
He makes up this hilarious lie, and it's such a good joke because it carries over kind of for a while, especially like when he's telling Fran, he's like, yeah, just keep the lie going. But to get back to the synopsis, so Fran agrees to take part in this date with Brock and even catches on that it's because of this business deal. It's not because, Fran had a liking to Brock. So they go out on this date, and she very quickly learns that Brock is not the character that he is on the soap opera because he's an actor and he's a different person off screen. She does not like him, and he tries to get fresh with her. And so she eventually kicks him in the nuts.
That was, you are not only looking like a young dad, you just spoke like one, getting fresh with her.
Shut up. You're getting fresh with my daughter.
Wow. No. Make sure if they're trying to get fresh with you, that you establish your boundaries. And if you ever need to call me, you just let me know. Use me as an excuse anytime.
Exactly. I'll always be there for you. So when Fran comes home, we see that Mr. Sheffield had been sleeping or had been waiting patiently in the living room with Brighton to wait to see how things went with Fran. And this is where we get this like clear breaking down of like business and pleasure when they have this intimate moment where Fran looks at Maxwell and they touch hands while eating peanuts, which I want to point out that hilarious line. I just want to grip his peanuts. And
I just want to rip his peanuts.
There was a ton of gay humor in this involving Maxwell in these two episodes. I don't know why. I'm wondering if there must have been a larger gay audience that watched this that thirsted for Maxwell or something, because
I think there was, but I don't know if they would have had that kind of hold on it this early in the season.
That's true. But there are so many lines that are leading into a sex joke. Especially with what was the joke he said about Brock he's like, oh, I've eaten him before. And and even the audience is like,
because they named a sandwich after him called the Brockwurst.
Yeah.
Which by the way is a phallic.
Yeah.
If you have a bratwurst, that's basically a hot dog or sausage.
Yeah.
So this oh, I've eaten him before.
Yeah, and everyone in the audience freaks out. They're like, "Ooh, yes, eat that!"
And I think also because he works in Broadway, in theater, they're always gonna do these fun little hints kind of thing about Maxwell.
I love it. I'm here for
little jokes. Excuse me.
So that's basically the point of this episode. But I do want to talk about just a few more things.
Sure.
So I want to talk about this uncomfortableness of Brock and Fran in this car, especially in a 2021 lens, where they go on this date and Brock tries to push himself onto Fran, and Fran does a really good job of pushing him away and saying no and
establishing boundaries very clearly.
Yeah, very, very clearly. And
even asked to get out of the car. And the driver, I'm sorry, I'm putting it out there. If you were a driver and a woman asks to get out of the car that's clearly on a date and the guy says, no, keep driving. I don't care if you work for that guy, you pull the fuck over.
Exactly.
Sorry, putting that out there.
But I do want to point out, I really appreciated for the character development of Maxwell to think about Nanny or Fran and his family first, and decided not to work with Brock after learning how shitty of a person he was to Fran. I really appreciated that because it showed me that there is a lot of character growth happening for this character, especially in this episode. We're learning he's vulnerable. He's having feelings for Fran, that there is this mutual understanding of I need to teach Fran to be a better nanny, and like be more professional in like her role, but she's also going to teach me to like how to be a better father. And
that's the whole thing too, right? He's the type of person that sees things very black and white, and not because he doesn't see the gray, but because the gray portion creates the anxiety and brings out the vulnerability. So because of, honestly, with a 2021 lens, we can look and say, well, his privilege really allows him to have things as be black and white, right? So when you keep things siloed, and that's why he wanted to not mix business and pleasure, it's like, if I can keep these things, then I can logically trick myself into believing things, whether it is about how he's feeling about Fran or anything else, right? And I think that that's something that I love the most about Maxwell, specifically in this episode, is you see that dilemma. And anytime you see Maxwell have a dilemma like that, I think it's an important moment to reflect on.
Totally. And it was also really cool to see the show take down the comedy a bit. And they had those very like moments where you see Maxwell longingly look out the window and they just kind of hover on it a little bit. And I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. So we're getting like actual sitcom-y moments where we're going to focus more on like the drama of this storyline and less on the comedy, which I was like, cool to see them kind of showcase their dramatic chops a little bit for the Nanny.
And I think too, like, there's not much that we've had, like, I think that Imaginary Friend is an example of when they tried to mix comedy and drama and came up short. A lot of that, to my opinion, is how they handled talking about mental health. I think there could have been a lot of really great ways that they could have framed and said things in that episode that would have still made it funny and lighthearted, but could have taken the tone down and been a little bit more serious. And instead we get kind of this like, I'm kind of uncomfortable with this feeling afterwards. I think they do it well here. And I think that, again, first season, 9 episodes in at this point, like there's very much this idea of developing characters and seeing some of the changes and such. And can't wait for you to see the other 6 seasons or 4 or 5 seasons or whatever.
I am truly so excited. Like this episode, if I had to rate it, I would give it a 10 out of 10 for sure. I would say this is probably my second favorite episode of The Nanny. I almost wanted to make it my first, but I remember I was hornier for Maxwell in My Fair Nanny, so I'm going to keep that one as my number one.
I think your favorite one that you said was the butler, that
one, yes.
The husband, the wife, and her mother.
Yeah, I was horny for him in that one too. I'm horny for Maxwell. Can I just get a shirt that says horny for Maxwell, please?
I will buy that for you, yes.
Yeah. I will wear it with pride. One,
and I will have a shirt that says fuck, and then so many of the characters on Lost.
So speaking of Lost, I'll give my LVP this episode to MVP was Niles. LVP to Brock, because fuck Brock and everything that he stands for. I know I shouldn't give it to one-off character episodes, but I gave it to Danny in the first episode. I'm going to give it to Brock.
If they play a significant role in the episode, it's fair game, because there are going to be guest characters that come in and are the stars of the show. There are going to be guest characters that are the villain and all that kind of stuff. I think it's fair. It's fair.
I agree.
Very cool. What is the outfit of this episode for you?
So the outfit for this episode, I had a hard time deciding, but I think
there's some iconic outfits in this particular episode.
But I think I'm going to give it to the shopping outfit, the leopard, where she's like, it's from JC Penny. Yeah.
So that is the promo outfit that they used for season 1.
Oh, you're right.
So that outfit is I think they ended up having the promo shoots before or after around the time of this shooting, which makes sense. And back in the 90s, I believe you order like half of a season, which would have been around 12 episodes. And then somewhere in the middle of that is when you would do all your promotional shooting, because it's not like now where you had digital things that just pop it right up on the computer, good to go. Like there was a little bit more development that had to happen. There were definitely computers and such, but it's just not as sophisticated as we have now.
Yeah.
So just the idea that I think they probably did the promotional shoots not too far away from when they shot this. Another thing I want to point out, just because I think it's cute.
Yeah.
And it kind of shows you who the kids are trying to be, if that makes sense, is that in the same episode that Maggie is wearing the same bathrobe as Fran, Brighton's wearing the same bathrobe as his father at the end of the episode. So it's like a nice bookends thing. And I will also say, going back to the Christmas episode, something I really want to bring up, the idea that Gracie is a child who wants to have her dad home for Christmas. I think that, yes, that's a trope that's been out there, but I also really want us to remember that Gracie has likely for most of her life only known one parent. And so when that parent isn't there, that is like a huge hole on Christmas versus Brighton and Maggie, who are a little bit older. Doesn't mean it hurts any less for them, but they might know how to handle it. And because I think, as we saw and discussed the episode before, there's some pretty complicated feelings with the co-parenting, specifically through Gracie's lens. I think that Brighton and Maggie do a little bit better job of being able to like talk about siloing, but like siloing who is what. So those are just some points I wanted to bring up. They're in no way spoilers. They're just observations I'm thinking about as we have our conversations.
Totally. I thought this was a great double feature for the Nanny, and I cannot wait to get into episode 10. This is going to be, going forward, really weird for us because now we're going to be one episode ahead of the Nanny instead of Lost. So just remember, if you are tuning in with us, the next episode is episode 10, not episode 9. You just watched episode 9, hopefully. But when we go into Lost, which we're about to talk about now, you're going to be watching episode 8 of Lost next episode. So
correct.
Or episode 9. Sorry.
You're going to be watching episode 9.
Girl, I'm already confused.
9 and 10. So one second. I'm just bringing up so you can know the name of the episodes if I do this correctly.
Okay.
So episode 10 is the nanny-in-law. So that is what you'll be watching if you're watching along with us. And then episode 9, I don't know what the title is that for Lost. So
I can pull that up. So the episode, the ninth episode, or so the eighth episode, the ninth episode of Lost is called Solitary. So
you'll be watching Solitary and the Nanny-in-Law. Those are the two that you'll have to think about for next time.
Got it.
But let us talk about episode 8 of Lost. Because thoughts here. So
yes, girl.
This episode was called Confidence Man.
Yep.
Okay. And this is a Sawyer-driven centric episode. Strangely enough, this episode, when I'm kind of used to like the background information and the character, and I'm not saying that it's not centered on Sawyer, of course. There's more of a focus of what's happening with Sawyer in real time, quote unquote, rather than his flashback, which we really haven't had that too much. It's normally been either a good 50-50 split or you learn much more about the character from their past. You actually learn more about his character, I think, from his present, which I think is an interesting shift.
I think there's a reason for that. I'll talk about that later.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm just going to come out and say, I think this is a solid 8 out of 10 episode. I don't think it's like as good as some of the other episodes that we've had. And I think part of this is because I kind of felt like I figured it out pretty early in the episode. I was just like, okay, keep going. But basically, to give you kind of the TLDR, and then we can go through the specifics of this episode. In the very beginning, Sawyer comes back from, I don't know if he's just sitting on the beach or in the he's in the jungle by himself. No,
he is swimming nude. in the ocean.
Yeah.
and then Kate. Oh, God, I thought that's what you were talking about.
Yeah, no, just in terms of like the plot stuff.
Oh, yeah, okay.
He's in the jungle and he hears some rustling, so he runs back to where he's kept his stash, where, you know, the things that he's essentially selling and, you know, to the other people of the island, and he sees Boone has gone through his stuff. We cut to the next scene. Boone is being carried. He's been punched and obviously beat up quite a bit to Jack. And Boone reveals he got beat up by Sawyer for going through his stuff, and that he was trying to find Shannon's inhaler medication because she has really bad asthma. But because she ran out of her medication a couple days before, she's starting to actually have her symptoms quite heavily and having these attacks. And so he's looking for the medication, thinks that Sawyer has it, isn't willing to deal with him, and just wants to do it. The reason why he thinks that is because the book that Sawyer is reading was in Boone's suitcase with medicine, because Boone always packs medicine, because shocker, Shannon doesn't think for her fucking damn self and her health. She relies on other people to do so. And again, all throughout the episode, and I know Dylan saw this, I was just cheering, let her die. Let her die. Like, I'm an awful human being. You can absolutely tell me that. I already know. I'm so over this girl that I thought I had an out. I was so excited. Anyway, they spend basically the entirety of the episode, Kate, Saeed, and Jack, trying to get information out of Sawyer of like, tell us where the medication is. And he won't give it up. He's trying to get Kate to kiss him. She won't kiss him. Saeed, I will take a step back. Locke really puts into Saeed's head that Sawyer's the one that knocked him out. But I was like, everything you're saying, Locke, is describing you. You're the person who's probably benefited the most, and people don't know this from the island because, like, you have your sense of being able to walk and run and hunt and do all the things you've ever wanted to do, but you can't do them until you crash on this island. And, like, you're the one who's changing people's lives like Charlie. So it makes sense to me that you would want to get off the island because you're like in your element and you get to be this leader figure and all that kind of stuff. So in my head, I'm like, where was Locke? And everyone's like, oh, well, he said I was skinning the boar. I'm like, were you though, girl? Were you skinning said boar? Because you were doing that with Charlie. Yes. But was this the same time? I don't know. Because that happened at night when you were skinning the boar, and he was knocked out before the nightfall. So tell me that, Locke. Tell me where. Anyway, so that's what my thinking was. So I think that what he was trying to do is shift the blame onto Sawyer. So Saeed has this, like, gets it into his mind that Sawyer is the one that knocked him out. So there's all this hatred towards Sawyer. And finally, at the end of the episode, Saeed kind of says, like, listen, I know how to torture people. I had to unfortunately do that. And they knock Sawyer out at the beach, Jack and him, tie him up to some like bamboo or something, and they start torturing him to try to get the information. Saeed takes bamboo and like shoves it underneath of his fingernails and is like trying to give him like the splinters.
It's gross.
And, like,
it's
so
disgusting.
So bad. It's so bad. And then and he just is like, you can tell in this moment that, like, for me, this is what the moment that confirmed that he didn't know where the medication was because I feel like Sawyer is above all else not somebody, until we learned his backstory, is not somebody, like, he will always put himself first, right?
Yeah.
So what you find out here is, like, he kind of feels like he deserves and needs a punishment. He's very masochistic, but not in the, like, kink sense. Although maybe he is. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not going to.
I don't know. Yeah.
I'm not going to yuck his yum, as Stefan would say.
I do want to know, actually. Let me know. Sawyer, hit me up. I want to know, because we're on a BDSM kick, apparently. So,
weirdly enough, this has nothing to do with what we're talking about. Weirdly enough, I was sitting here. I've never watched Lost, right? I weirdly know so many of these actors' names, and I remembered it was because this was the time that I was so obsessed with, like, the Golden Globes and the Emmys, and they were always nominated. And I was also reading, like, people and okay, like in high school and in early college. So like they were huge stars then.
Yeah.
So the fact that I would like look at him and I know his name is Josh Holloway, but like I don't know anything else he's ever been in. I never watched the show he was in. It's just funny to me. Yeah. And like I know that Matthew Fox plays the lead, and like I know Evangeline Lilly's done other things, but it's just like funny to me that like I just look at him and I go, I know that your name is Josh Holloway. Anyway, just random thought there. We'll get into this a little bit more, but I kind of just feel like it comes out Sawyer doesn't know. He basically, I don't know if this is a long ruse to get a kiss from Kate, but basically what he does is says, I will tell you where the medication is, but I will only tell Kate. They send Kate in there. He's all bloody. And he basically says like, I will tell you and only you if you kiss me. And so they kissed, bitch. It was not just.
It was not like a peck. They were sucking face.
They were sucking face, like to the point where I was just like, I feel like I'm intruding on something.
Yeah, is this a porn?
Is this a porn? I had many moments where I wrote, I've seen this porn before. I wrote it 3 times.
Yeah, there's a lot of like
this many notes, and I wrote, I've seen this porn before 3 times.
One thing that I do want to say, since we're talking about this specific moment, is this is how you write, in my opinion, romance and sexual stuff compared to like that one shitty episode, House of the Rising Sun. It was still cringy a little bit in this. Like Jack was clearly jealous in specific sections, but it wasn't to the level of like House of the Rising Sun.
Can I be honest with you?
Yeah.
I really don't like how they're writing Kate's character. Like I really despise it.
Agreed.
This is what I wrote. I hate that Kate is basically a prop for men. Let her have a say in a storyline that allows her to be the badass she clearly was before this fight. Like, I know that this island is about taking and giving, and there's elements and themes to that. She was clearly an independent, strong-willed woman. And now all we see her do is her little whiny, mopey face and just kind of stare at either Sawyer or Jack and like play second fiddle to them. And like, she's clearly competent. And I just so hate her character for that reason. Like, I can't get into her character, which makes me realize how much I don't like this storyline, because her whole storyline turns into, is it gonna be Jack or is it gonna be so? I'm like, fuck that. I want her to do more shit with Saeed and figure out, I want her to be the hero with Saeed on this.
Agreed.
Like, how powerful would it have been if it like had been first of all, an American white woman and an Iraqi ex-soldier.
Yeah.
Like, imagine in 2004, that's the dynamic duo that fixes shit. Like, that to me would be more mind-blowing. But instead we get this stupid love triangle situation that I hope it resolves in a way that is satisfying, because if it doesn't, that's really just going to grind my gears throughout the entirety of the series.
I will say, I don't want to spoil anything, but I will say this is like my 3rd viewing. And I will say the second time I viewed this, I was like half paying attention because I was watching it with like one of my exes that we weren't really paying it. He was not paying attention. So not like sexually, but like,
I'm just saying there were porn moments here. So I understand.
He wasn't, he just wasn't
putting his jar into like an invisible thing of peanut butter and going,
I hate that.
It's extra smooth.
I hate it. I hate everything about that. No, it was just that he didn't seem to like Lost. And so it was like he was watching it for me. And then I was like, well, I'm not into it if you're not into it. But this specific character arc for Kate in season 1, I didn't see it when I first watched it as problematic. On my now, I guess, really paying attention my second time, I fucking hate Kate. I can't stand her.
She has no sense of agency, and like, she clearly has a story.
Yeah. And
I hate that it's like, clearly you trust Jack the most out of so here's what I'm seeing. Okay. I'm seeing that she trusts Jack more than anybody, but there's a raw physical chemistry with Sawyer.
Yeah.
And how much of that is Sawyer projecting and coercing her? I don't know. But I also have a huge problem with that. But anyway, I really, really can't get into her character.
Yes, no, I get it, girl. I get it.
It's just frustrating.
It's terrible
I think what's
writing.
mostly frustrating too is that I am so like there is an embarrassment of riches, and there's still a lot of work to be done. I'm not just saying like, oh, we're good and we've reached that, but like there's an embarrassment of riches of like strong female characters in so many wonderful shows. Like even if you took something that had so many different fan theories and such, like Game of Thrones, like think about how many strong female characters.
Totally.
Even if you didn't like them, they were 3D, they were amazing, they had pros and cons, all these different kinds of things. I look at this show and all of the women besides Kate are essentially background figures or are props for men, and it's like all the men are making all the decisions and doing well and stuff. Yep. And it just really, it takes a lot of the wind out of the sails of like for these characters. And this is such a show that is, I can already tell that is about character development and is about characters. And I'm like, so show me the damn characters and don't just make people props and don't just make people tokenized and those kind of things.
Agreed.
So anyway, this is a long ass rant to get that out, but I just felt this is the episode where I feel like I had my final straw with it. We had the House of the Rising Sun episode that was just kind of like whiplash, but now I feel like we went back to like how the writers were writing things before, but I'm just like, give me more with Kate. I want her to, the little nugget that we get of her is how she clocks at the very end, which I'm going to get to. After they make out, she reveals that, Sawyer doesn't actually know where it is. He's never known. And Saeed gets so angry that he stabs him. And then Jack sends Saeed to go get his medical kit stuff. He comes back, patches up. When Sawyer comes to, the note that he showed, which I haven't mentioned, he showed Kate a note because Kate said, I've seen you carefully put this in your pocket. And he made her read it out loud that said, Dear Mr. Sawyer, you slept with my mother. It said
also, I'd never had a sugar daddy. I never had a sugar daddy.
Yeah. He said, where did this bitch hear that I had a sugar daddy? It was a really wonderful moment where it turned into The Office and it broke the fourth wall. And Sawyer just looks at the camera and goes, I never had a sugar daddy. If I had a sugar daddy, if I wanted a sugar daddy, yes, I could go out and get one because I am what? Sickening. You can never have a sugar daddy. Anyway, no. So it said, Dear Mr. Sawyer, we haven't met. You slept with my mother and my father, and you took my father's money, and then my father killed my mother, and then he killed himself. And so I'm going to find you someday and give you this note as a reminder of what you've done to me. Yeah. And so we're obviously supposed to assume that he's the Sawyer. And Kate says, I looked at the back and I saw the stamp. And basically the stamp is a bicentennial stamp from 1976. So he would have been a child at this time. And so she basically clocks, you're the child. And he admits, yes, like, so that this is his note that he wrote, but that he basically conned a man the same way that this guy did to his father. And so he's basically become all that he has hated his entire life. So you really see that at the core of all of this is that Sawyer so deeply hates himself. And so like, the way I wrote it, I liked it. I said, he's an ass probably because he feels like he deserves that. And like, he doesn't deserve good things and good people and that kind of thing. So what I couldn't figure out, and I don't know if it's a spoiler or if it's just something I missed or you can clarify for me, the flashbacks, was that him filling the role as the real Mr. Sawyer, or was that him conning the guy?
Yeah. Let me explain that a little bit. So I'll explain that first. So the reason why that flashback happened, it was something that Sawyer himself was doing.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why he stopped the con was because when he saw the kid, it brought him back to reality of like, oh shit, I'm doing exactly what happened to me as a kid.
Yep.
And that's why he immediately was like, I need to get out of here. I need to stop, because he's like, I'm going to ruin this kid's life just like the actual Sawyer ruined mine. And I think that's when he really felt shitty about himself in that specific moment. The thing that I really like about this episode is similar to what you said. The flashbacks play second fiddle to like what's happening on the island, because, and this is just my theory, Sawyer is a new man, or he's going to struggle to become a new man on this island. It doesn't matter what he did off this island. The Sawyer that we're getting on this island is the Sawyer that he needs to make himself and build himself up to be. Because as we learned in this episode, he fucking hates himself. He has this super, like he has a terrible mindset about himself to the point where he's willing to be tortured just to feel like he gets the punishment that he deserves because of the shit that he did to people, or he did to this like a family off of this island. And so I really appreciated the fact that the flashback was simply a story device, and that's why the flashbacks were so short in this episode.
Yeah, and I do think too that I completely agree with that. I think that and I'm hopeful that this is, we've already seen Sawyer change a little bit, right?
Yeah.
From the first episode to here, we see these like tendencies that he has to just be an ass for the sake of being an ass. And now we know it's because like he feels like he deserves to be hated. So like that's literally what he's doing in order to get the treatment he feels like he deserves. But I am hopeful that if there is some redeemable fucking thing from this like love triangle, is that hopefully Kate is the reason why he's able to like work on becoming a new man and that kind of thing. And I'm not saying because of a romantic sense. I'm saying I hope that there's some agency where Kate gets to drive and help his character really feel like he deserves a second chance, and that as more people come to realize that this island is a second chance for them, I think that that's likely what's going to happen. We've already seen people are already different. And I think what we're seeing is every time an episode is centric on somebody, it's like now they're set up for whatever the change is going to be, or the change happens in the episode. So, and speaking of which, we see a couple of those changes in this episode. We see Sun approach Michael and say, I think I know how to help this girl. I need you to go collect what ends up being eucalyptus. And he collects it, and she kind of, both her and Michael, when Jen comes over to question about it, she just like walks away from him holding the eucalyptus. And I was like, you better fucking work, girl.
Yes.
And I feel like they put that in there so intentionally, because in the previously scenes, they showed when Jen had made her button up her shirt and she obliged. Like, she's not having any of that shit now.
Nope.
And then Michael point blank looks at him and goes, don't you try it. Don't you fucking dare. She is a queen. You will,
Mama,
if you try to come for me, bitch, I'm from Chicago, is what he says. It's really great.
He did.
I figured if we can just put as many Drag Race fight compilations into this from season 2 and 3, would be great.
I'd love that. I need that.
So good. So basically, we see that kind of growth. We're seeing growth from Jack.
No. I actually want to talk about this. I wholeheartedly disagree.
I need to explain what I meant by that. Because as soon as I said that, I was like, okay, he didn't really grow.
Yeah. Well, he did kind of grow in a little bit. He
has grown in the sense that Sawyer is the reason why he quite literally had to kill Mars, right?
Yep.
Because Sawyer couldn't do it. He tried, but he failed. And so he had to do it. And so he's had this feeling of like having to clean up after other people's messes and such, especially when it comes to Sawyer. And there's so many special ways that Sawyer gets underneath. And I think that I feel like it's very easy to imagine new Jack just letting Saeed go ahead and torture, but he's the one that really stops it. Like, he's the one that stops it. And I'm not saying that there's a growth moment in the fact that he even let it happen to begin with, but I think that there is a growth in there that is, I have to do what is important to help people survive out here. And if you aren't going to be a part of the unity, you're a part of the problem. And he's kind of sticking to that, which I think is important growth in terms of character.
That's true.
When we say growth, it's not always positive. It just means you've seen them grow from where they were in the beginning. Now, I would like to say I did have a chuckle at a point where I shouldn't have chuckled, which is when he punches Sawyer twice in the caves. His arm, I'm like, you dumbass, you just had your shoulder dislocated like a day ago in the fucking caves, and you're like, ugh, and you're like punching him twice and being like, ow, like, bitch.
Well,
kick him.
I just wrote Jack punches like a little bitch. Like, he clearly doesn't know how to fight well because Sawyer took those punches like it was nothing. He was just like, oh, is that it?
But also, okay, I need people to understand punching the face. Yeah, sure. Whatever. Punch the solar plexus. That hurts. Yeah. That is your center of gravity. That's right. Sorry, my boobs are massive.
Like, oh.
It's your center of gravity. No, it's there's
don't get a stand on YouTube.
It's like the basically your diaphragm area. So if you do a punch right there, and first of all, it's easier to punch here center. Sorry, I'm bringing back to when I was in Kendaquan. It's easier to punch here and throw your weight into it because you use your momentum of your hips. When you punch up here, it's like a little different. Like, so you punch down here and go, and then they're low enough that you punch them in the face the same way because they bend over. Or then you stomp on their foot, or you knee them in the balls, or there's so many things he could have done. I'm sorry.
She's like, I just want to kick his ass.
Commander.
Well, the reason why I felt like this was an interesting episode for Jack, because Sawyer's point here is that we cannot play like we are back at a 5-star resort. We can't pretend that everything is normal. This is survival of the fittest, and we need to treat it that way. And the way he is pushing Jack's buttons to showcase another side of Jack, and Jack gives into it, which is why I'm like, is this growth for Jack? Because Jack is eventually persuaded by Sawyer's actions to beat Sawyer up in front of everyone, scaring everyone in the caves and making them think differently of Jack. They see him haul Sawyer away to get tortured to the point where Kate is like publicly saying, what the fuck are you doing?
I don't know if that was so public though, because his little thing is farther away from people. I feel like That's Kate is probably the only person who saw, but still important.
Yeah. And then it also, I think, tinges people's opinions of Saeed as well, because like when Saeed goes to the caves, Boone is like, whose blood is that? Like, what's going on here? And he just says point blank, it's Sawyer's. Like, and he like runs off.
And Sawyer's like, I didn't know we were beating him up. Let me go. And I'm like, calm down, kid.
Yeah. I was like, Boone, shut up.
Boone, you literally can't do it. So just need you to calm the fuck down.
But we also get a ton of Saeed development here where we learn that.
Yes.
I love it. I love the fact that we're learning so much more about Saeed. Saeed made apparently a promise to himself to never torture anyone again or do physical harm like that to someone ever again. And he nearly broke that promise. And
I would argue that he did break that promise because he fucking tortured him. But I will. So what we see at the end here is that he decides he's going to go off by himself and circle the island and try to get information about where they are, if there's other people, what's out there, that kind of thing. And he says the line, I have to let this job go to someone who I trust. And there's only one person I trust here, which is himself. But the best part about that is he literally can't trust himself, which is why he's leaving. So I'm like, so what is this? Do you trust yourself? Do you not trust yourself? What's going on here? Okay. But I think this is really great. I really hope we get a Saeed-centric episode very soon.
Do you want a spoiler?
Yes. Is it next week?
It's next episode.
Yes!
It's a Saeed episode.
Oh, so I figured because we wouldn't have just like let him go off and not like do a episode.
I will say, starting next week, we get an amazing arc. An amazing arc. Like, remember when I said on the Moth, I was like, we're starting to get to the point where we're getting like the second hump, the second wave. Yeah. We are fully in the second wave now, where next episode is Saeed, and this is where we're going to start seeing things ramp up on this island, and like the storylines develop. And oh, girl, I can't wait.
I can't wait either. And I have so many theories that I can't wait to see what happens. So the first theory, we have to go back to the fact that Saeed was knocked out, right? When he was trying to figure out like where the signal was coming from. I have two theories on this.
Okay.
I still maintain that it's somebody who is not with them that has been on the island, whether it's the woman that they've heard or whatever. And I do think that it is a woman that knocked him out.
Okay.
For the main reason that Saeed emphasizes, I'm going to find the man that did this to me, to a point where I was like,
okay.
You emphasized man so much, it makes me feel like it's got to be a woman that did it. Just to be like, isn't it crazy that a woman did it? Like, So that's one theory. The other theory is that it is Locke that knocked him out.
Okay.
And I have another Locke theory.
Oh, what is it?
I have a theory that Locke is like this everyman kind of guy, right?
Okay.
But I had this moment where I was like, what if Locke is the original Sawyer? And like, and Sawyer has the chance to give him the letter and all this other stuff. And like, so what I'm wondering is if like Locke was this Sawyer guy and all this shit happened to Sawyer's parents and it led to Locke's injury that makes it so he can't walk, like all that kind of stuff. Like there's a part of me that's like, are these people intertwined? Like, what is the reason they are all here? Because I'm going to say this is not on our global Earth. Like, this is another realm. This is a holding place. This is something. And I think that the reason why those specific people, like even the fact that like Rose's husband is not there, like they're separated, like there are people who died and like that kind of thing. But I think that the people who are alive on this island are bonded for something other than the fact they were just on an airplane. So I wouldn't be shocked if there's some huge story that like, or force that combines like either all of them or groups of them that have to like figure out like basically their relationship with each other. Okay. So like my theory was like, ooh, what if Locke is the original Sawyer? Because he's like the only one age-wise that would fit that.
Okay. Yeah.
So that was theory.
I dig that. I want to know your theory. What do you think is going to happen to Sawyer, or not Sawyer, Saeed, now that he's mapping the island?
Excuse me.
This could go anywhere. This could go anywhere. But
I mean, honestly, it could be as boring as, well, there was nothing.
Okay.
And I'm back. Yeah. I mean, but we know that's not going to be the case. I wouldn't show it like that. So what I think is he's either going to discover other people, therefore, like proving my point that I think it was somebody else that did it, that knocked him out, not someone that's in their group. Or I don't think he's going to have the same thing happen to him that Locke did, which is like Locke had this like transcendent, like I saw into the eye of the island and I've seen everything, blah, blah, blah. I don't think Saeed's going to have that. Saeed and Locke are fundamentally very different like Locke was looking for anything and everything. And I feel like the island offered it to him. I think that he was willing to put his faith into something because there was this miracle that happened. Saeed is very much not a miracle worker. He's very technical. He's thinking about science and technology and those kind of things. So to me, like, I wouldn't be shocked. I think he finds the antenna or whatever that is sending out the thing there, but it's not what he expects. And I think that leads to whatever the next plot point is with trying to figure out how to contact somebody. Like, that's what I think he comes across. But I don't think he like stumbles upon it immediately. I think it's going to take him a little while to get to that.
Okay, cool. And then I wanted to also point out, or not point out, get your opinions on this whole cute Claire Charlie thing with like the peanut butter.
Okay.
It is so cute.
Okay, so I like this. And I will say this too. This goes back to Saeed, but it also involves Claire. I've been taking really big notes when people are wearing white and black. And Saeed literally gets Sawyer's blood on him in a white shirt and then wears black at the end when he's walking off.
Yep.
So I don't know what it means still. But Claire is still wearing fucking black. And I'm like, does that mean y'all motherfuckers are going to die? Or does it mean that you have made the switch to what the island is like needed of you first? So did Saeed need to give up and say, I am not going to torture somebody. I'm not going to do this. And I need to go off on my own. Was that what he needed to do? And now he can wear black. Claire's baby was dead and now it's alive. So maybe that's what something happened and whatever. Like, I don't know. Their thoughts.
Oh, I can't speak or say anything.
I know. Don't speak.
I know.
And then this whole Claire and Charlie thing, I think, is really cute because, first of all, we don't see Charlie withdrawing at all. So he's either like, I'm done, which like that doesn't happen in real life. So is just this like the island, or is this like, again, this inconsistency of time and stuff? Because like clearly Jack's shoulder still hurts. And if his shoulder still hurts, Charlie, you got to be withdrawn, buddy. Like that doesn't just go away over 24 hours. It doesn't, like, point blank.
I'm going to point something out that I don't think you've noticed yet.
Okay.
People tend to heal very quickly on this. They try to symbolize that with the scratches on Kate's cheek. I don't know if you noticed that, but they were very fresh, like literally 2 days ago, and they're almost fully healed within like 2 days.
Yeah, I kind of talked about this a little bit. It was like the last episode or the one before, where I was like, okay, shouldn't the healing of like getting gored by a boar be hindering Michael, but he seems to be walking fine? Like, so I do think, like, I have been thinking about that. I do think that, again, this island does not work on the same time. Like, it also seems like they're like, we've been here for 9 days, and I'm like, it was fully nighttime 4 times in this episode, so like, what the fuck are you talking about? Then I realized they're in the cave. It wasn't nighttime. It's just dark there, Beth. Regardless, I do think that like there's so many properties to this island in some capacity. So to me, it's like getting healed super quickly is part of it. But I do think that like it's an interesting thing. Like, I noted that the reason why he doesn't withdraw around Claire is that he's very invested in her, and like he can kind of get out of himself, if that makes sense. And I really thought it was cute that he goes and tries to find the peanut butter for Claire and all that kind of stuff. I still love that line that Claire said a few episodes ago, where she said, "You're the only person that is like, looks me in the eye and isn't afraid of me, like I'm just some time bomb that's gonna like go off." But it is weird to me. Like, I feel like Jack would have been the one that was like, I need you near me, like in case you go into labor, bitch. Like, what is she gonna do? Oh, I'm in labor. Go get the doctor who's a mile away. And
agreed completely.
This is kind of weird that Jack has not been like pushing her as much as Charlie has to get her to go to the cave.
I right there with you. And then I have to ask, I know you're gonna fucking hate me. So, thoughts about Shannon's asthma and Shannon's asthma attacks.
All I could think of is that little boy from Signs when he's having the asthma attack down in the basement. They're like, and he's just, and like the alien just had him through like the grate or whatever. And I was just thinking in my head, man, I wish an alien would kill Shannon.
You didn't feel bad for Shannon at all here?
Of course I feel bad for people who can't breathe. I'm not that bad, even though I did want her to die. Just so I would have to put up with her. Of course I feel bad.
I didn't, but I just want to guilt you into feeling bad.
No, I do. I did feel bad, but I definitely felt like there's a part of me that just character wise, I'm like, how much of this is her putting it on?
Okay.
Like,
yeah.
I don't think she has what's it called, Munchausen's or whatever, where you make yourself like believe that you have a terminal illness or something like that. Not that asthma is necessarily terminal, but like this idea that how much has she been able to like amp it up for attention, and like she might absolutely be having a panic attack, but has been able over years to make it seem like asthma. Like, I don't know. I don't have asthma, but I've had plenty of anxiety and panic attacks, and it literally feels like you can't breathe sometimes. Like,
totally.
or like for me, it always starts off like, I can't swallow. I don't know how to swallow. I'm going to drown on my spit, or I'm not going to be able to breathe, and I shouldn't eat anything. I can't drink anything. Oh my God, I can't breathe. Oh! And then like my heart rate's going, blah.
Yeah.
So I definitely think like put in the stressful situation she is, and like I can understand that. But I don't know. I don't think that she is faking it. I threw that out there as a theory because it wouldn't shock me.
Also, fuck Charlie for assuming that Hurley's hoarding food because of his weight.
But also, you better go, Hurley, with that. But that was actually another reason why I was like, this island is weird, because I agree he probably should have lost at least a lot of water weight at this point, considering how hot he must be, and he's moving around a lot and all this other stuff. So, but then he did say, I've moved down one notch in my belt. So I was like, okay, that actually makes sense. But it is something to keep in mind that like,
so I do want to point out one thing about Lost. This used to be a big fan theory about Hurley and like how Hurley has not lost weight. And I can't remember completely, but I believe Hurley does it. Like the actor, I think it's Jorge Garcia. He addressed he addresses this on different podcasts, saying like it was really hurtful that people assumed that he had to lose all this weight for the show, when he's like, you have to have some sense of suspension of disbelief for a show like this. He's like, I cannot realistically lose a shit ton of weight for the show. And they do address this later on. I'm not going to spoil anything.
Yeah, please don't.
Like his weight, but it is for specifically this section. Don't try to focus on the fact he hasn't actually lost weight. They'll say things like, I've lost.
No, but that's what I'm saying is like, it's not that I actually expected all of a sudden I was going to go, lost weight. But the idea that like he then said, I'm down a notch on my belt. I'm like, okay, though he has lost weight, because all I'm trying to connect it with is things like, I'm still stuck on the fact that baby just like started kicking again randomly after eating from the island. Like, and that people are healing like freakishly quickly, that Locke can walk and run and do all these things that he couldn't do before. Like, there's just these things that I was like, interesting. Maybe Hurley hasn't given to the island yet, or whatever the case is. I don't know. So,
oh my God, could you imagine? This is so offensive, but like, could you imagine if like Hurley gave to the island and just became like a skinny legend, or like some like big boobs, big ass, like skinny legend? He's like, hey,
oh my God.
Hey, mom.
You know what I was dying at? I saw this TikTok. First of all, this is 100% true, so I'm just putting it out there. I saw this TikTok where this guy who is like in incredible shape was like, all I'm hearing is that girls want dad bods and they don't want like my body, like whatever, like I have a six pack, like whatever. And like somebody stitched it or like or duetted it or something. I think it was a stitch. But this guy goes, that's right. They want dad bods because they want somebody who can look a little fit or whatever, you know, it's not too shabby or whatever, but then when we go home they want little pillows to hang on and like a nice little guy and like something that's more fun to cuddle with.
Yeah.
I was like, you're not wrong, but like, this is, I mean, again, same thing that happens with the nanny. I think the nanny is a way worse offender when it comes to size. There's a huge issue with the nanny with size, and being sizist and fat phobia and all those different kinds of things. Those things makes sense with I'm not saying I agree with them, but they make sense within the time period of when you think about
Absolutely.
supermodels and anorexia was like at an all-time high and those kind of things. And we are starting to see, like last episode, Michael called Hurley out about being racist, about, you know, calling the Korean couple Chinese. We're seeing Hurley stand up for himself about being basically about fat shaming from Charlie. There was another thing that got called out and I can't remember, but regardless, like we're starting to see these changes. And I think that what I like about this is like, we're going to be offensive first, but we're going to show people standing up for each other, which is the way to do that.
Yeah. It's also really cool to see that on a show about survival on an island where people are together their basic instincts.
Still amazing. Like it's still necessary because it's absolutely, yes, this is a basic human survival thing, is to be seen and heard and validated for who you are, and that your needs are not just food, water, shelter. It also is to be recognized for the person that you are and like your needs there. Because if otherwise you're just basically a shell of a human that's just living. It's
like Kate. No,
I mean, you said it, I didn't.
Yeah.
But yeah, so for this episode, like I said, I'm going to give it a solid 8 out of 10.
Yeah.
My MVP for this episode, this is a hard one.
There's a lot of.
Say this one is Sun, because of she comes to the rescue for the eucalyptus and she stands up to Jin. So I'm gonna go with Sun.
I like that.
My LVP. There's so many.
There really are.
I'm going to have to go with Saeed. I think actually doing the torture was a lot. And I can't fully give it to Sawyer. I can't fully give it to Jack. And there's nobody else was that horrible. So I have to go with Saeed. This is an ugly episode for a lot of the characters. So
it is. I think it's one of those. And again, it's interesting because a lot of the characters in Lost have like, it's like a roller coaster. So people have their ups and downs. And this is like definitely one of the downs for some of these characters because especially I think for Jack, because Jack had really had it in his mind that we could like build a society in these caves. And he's quickly learning that it's not going to be all sunshine and daisies if you want that to happen. You're going to have to compromise some of your morals in order to make that. So you're going to have to take a page literally out of Sawyer's book. But then also we still have to remember that they aren't one society. They're still two groups. So that's important. So yeah, that's cool. Kind of where I'm at. Yeah, this was a great
jam-packed episode.
It really was. We just covered 3 episodes. That's insane. I feel like I just gave like an essay in college. A dissertation on these amazing porn like episodes, because there was a lot of
this peanut butter porn before.
For real. That is literally the 3 out of the 3 episodes. The connective tissue is sex. Basically, there's a lot of sexual feelings and lust,
sexual tension.
Absolutely. But thank you guys so much for tuning in to this episode of Hot Mess Moments. If you want to check us out on our personal accounts, you can follow me at 8-Bit Dylan. Now, we didn't give our intros at the beginning of this, but whatever.
You know what? If you're jumping in at this time, God love you. Yes, I'm Beth, also known as Augusta Wind 11 on all my social media, including Twitch. And if I can, I will just say that this week, when we drop this episode on Thursday, the next day, Friday the 21st, I will be doing a special charity event that I helped organize, that I did organize, for my team Level Up on Twitch, where basically if you love Pokemon and you have Pokemon Sword or Shield, I am a gym leader. Come battle me, and if you win, I'll give you my league card. In order to enter, all you have to do is donate to the link that I have on my Twitter to support Black Girls Code. We would love a $5 or more donation, but if you're going to battle many people, we asked that you consider a $20 or more donation. But yeah, I'm excited about it.
It's going to be a good time. I'm hyped because you're going to be the wind gym leader. Yeah, flying.
The
That's
flying.
it. Flying
Yes.
one. Yeah.
I had
That's
to go with something that was a little on brand for me. So.
Oh, she's like a gust of wind or something.
Yes.
And if you guys want to check us out on Twitter, it's at Hot Mess Moments. And make sure, if you can, to leave us a review on just Apple Podcasts is the only one that does reviews. So leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Check us out on Spotify. And if you're watching the YouTube version, make sure to hit that sub button and leave us a like. Seriously, though.
Do we have any comments that we have to get to for this?
We do. I was about to. That was going to be my segue into it. So we do have 2 comments from last episode. We have Jackie, who I think found us through oh my God, where did Jackie find us from? Jackie, comment again where you found us from. I know that you found us from.
But then Jackie showed the coworkers.
Yes, Jackie did show the coworkers. So
yeah.
Jackie left us a comment that said, "This show has become one of my favorite things about Thursday," which is so nice. We love you, Jackie. And then Carrie Ann posted a comment that says, "Also, Beth, House of Wax with Paris Hilton is a remake of a 1953 movie with Vincent Price. And the Lost Forums were so good when they started. I used to be on them after the show every week. This is good. This is getting to the good part of the first season, which is what I had commented. It's starting to get to like the really good part of season 1.
God. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's the temptation to want to watch another episode tonight is so high.
It's a lot.
It's so good. I know you're gonna fucking love next episode.
I can't wait.
Yeah, it's a great one. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. We will see you guys next week. And until then, stay awesome, stay beautiful.
Kisses, besos.
I fucking hate you. All right, bye, y'all.
Bye.